Okay.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to everybody that's able to join us for this historical moment. We suspect that this is, if not the first time in New Zealand, maybe the first time in the world that somebody has been using Google Hangout for their AGM. So we will also be filmed for this via YouTube, so you'll be able to go back and have a look at it if it suits. I'd just like to introduce the members of the trustees of the board or the directors. For those of you that are in the teaching fraternity that haven't met us, I'm Murray Jackways, the board chair, and my background was at Mount Aspiring College and Ormiston Senior College. So welcome, and I'll now ask Madeline to introduce herself, please.
Kia ora, everybody. I'm Madeline Campbell, and up until the end of yesterday I was working at Westland High School. I guess I'm part of the board to represent, or have been representing the teacher perspective. I teach art history via video conference. Thanks.
Thank you. Bill?
Tēnā koutou katoa, Bill Feasy, Principal, Twizel Area School.
Thank you, Bill. And Stephen?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Stephen Higgs. I'm a partner with Paulson Higgs. We're a business advisory firm in Dunedin, and my role is as, I guess, an advisor to the board and to NetNZ.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Unfortunately, at this stage, we haven't got Michael Campbell joining us. Michael's also one of the directors. Hopefully, when he comes on board, we will be able to introduce him to you at that point. I'd like now to hand over to Ken just to explain the clarification of the voting status of this meeting. Thanks, Ken.
There is a couple of things which I want to do before that, and it's just a few explanations about using Google Hangout on air. I can see, I know that at least Kelvin Robertson is beaming in because he's posted a question in the Q&A section. The reason why we can't invite everyone in is that there is a limit of 10 active participants participating, like the board and the exec team are at the moment. However, if you post a question in the Q&A area, we'll know you're there, and if you request to speak, we'll be able to potentially bring you in, because we aren't at that limit of 10 yet. So finding the Q&A part of the broadcast is reasonably important. If you go to the top of your screen on the right-hand side, you should find a little square, I think a little set of four or five little boxes. Click on that, and it should open up. You should find an option to open up the Q&A bar, which will appear on the right-hand side of your screen, and you are able to contribute questions in that area, just as Kelvin has already. So do that, and if you want to talk, indicate that in that Q&A box, and I will try and bring you into the conference. The other thing which we were going to suggest is that occasionally the quality of the streamed broadcast isn't very good for those of you in the audience. If you're sitting beside if you're in your VC room, we were suggesting that you also connected to the VC on with a pin 660000. That's 4 zeros at the end, where Linda would be. But unfortunately, Linda was going to be our connection point, and we haven't been able to establish that connection down to Linda yet. I'm going to keep trying in a moment. But anyway, that's sort of just some technical sort of things which hopefully you do. Post questions if you're having technical problems with Hangout on air. Clarification about voting. This is NetNZ is a sort of a dual organisation with NetNZ Charitable Trust owning NetNZ Limited. This AGM is really a combined AGM, but it is primarily the AGM of NetNZ Limited. The sole shareholder of NetNZ Limited is the trust, NetNZ Charitable Trust. So when it comes to formal motions, the only people who can vote are the trustees who represent the trust, the sole owner of NetNZ. So we will be asking for votes. We will be asking people to sort of vote for motions. However, those any vote which comes through is really just providing the trustees with an indication of how the membership sort of feels. They'll take cognizance of that, and then they will ratify those decisions in a meeting following this AGM. So the only formal vote that members actually have is a vote for the election of the new trustee director, which has already happened. I think I've covered that.
Ken, can I just interrupt? It's a good idea if someone's speaking for everyone else to be on mute. There's been quite a lot of feedback. So just to ensure the quality, if someone's speaking, then the rest of us go on mute. Will help quite a bit.
Thanks, Darren. Good comment. Ken, have you finished? Have you just nod? You've covered, yeah, okay, thank you. I have some apologies. I'll read them. John Cruden, Jen Rogers, Mason Stretch, Rebecca Scott, Marianne Darmody, Heather Watt, Glenys Sim, Ben Crawford, Shona Solomon, Anna Heffernan, and reading Kelvin's comment, Patsy Inder as well. Do we have any further apologies that people would like to list? Okay, thank you for that. Then I would like to move that these apologies are approved. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll do that. Bill.
Oh, thanks, Bill. Okay. Now I'll come back. Receipt and adoption of the annual report. I hope everybody's had the opportunity to look at the document. I'd just like to acknowledge the executive team for getting this document together and making it look so professional. So thank you to you. My chairman's report is brief but sincere. I'd just like to acknowledge that, as I've said in my report, that it feels in many ways like we've been together for a long time, but in other respects it feels like we've only been together for a very short time, which is the reality of it. But even though there's still an element of so to say the blind leading the blind, that's probably a little harsh. The executive definitely aren't blind. I think there's a level there of we don't know what we're doing. I think we truly are at bleeding edge of where we're going with online learning. So we're going to make mistakes, there's no doubt about that, but our intent is absolutely to enhance online learning. So we are there for the best interests of the wider community. So having said that, I would just like to pay a lot of tribute to the fellow board members, directors, and particularly to the executive for hours and hours and hours of work that have gone into this, because for most of the executive member, it's more than a job, it is an absolute passion for them as well, and that comes through in every meeting we have. So thank you on behalf of everybody for the work that you've put in. And it's my pleasure now to ask Darren and Ken on behalf of the executive to give us their report. Who's leading that? Darren?
Yeah, I'm starting that. Ken is actually. Can I just get you to go and mute there, Maury? Sorry.
I
don't usually want to mute you, but yeah, Ken will talk at some length on the financial side of things, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of you watching that have a vested interest in finding out more about that. Also, and giving some feedback on that. Basically, we've got two main goals. If you look at the report, you'll see some strategic goals just briefly outlined, and that's because we want to get the feedback on those from the staff and the community at large. So we need to keep them fairly loose at the moment, but we certainly have some idea of how we're going to go about doing that. But the two key goals, we wanted to be quite focused and not be spread our energies too much. We've got a fairly finite resource in terms of how many we have in the team. So one key goal is ensuring that financial sustainability. So that is a real focus for us over the next year or two, is to explore the ways we can do that. And there are numerous possibilities there that I'll delve into in a second, and of course Ken will talk about the sort of some nuts and bolts there. And the second one is around basically developing the ownership of NetNZ, the sense of community, because there was a real sense of ownership with the Targetnet and Canternet, especially amongst the principals and teachers, and they were all well involved. And it's ensuring that we maintain that same sense of involvement and ownership with NetNZ, despite the fact it's so large, and that's perhaps the challenge with it, is the geographic spread. But there are ways of going about meeting that challenge, and we've been doing that to some extent with the staff, and the next step is to develop it amongst the rest of the community and key stakeholders over the next year or two. We don't want it to be something that's seen to be just sort of out there as a service. We want everyone involved, and we want everyone's voice, and I think that's really important going forward. It's not just all about what we think, far from it. So that's why you know, it's really important you put your questions through in here and you get your feedback. We will actually organise another, well, how many of a video conference or hangout sessions we may need if you want to actually have some more discussion on certain areas. In terms of how we go about the financial sustainability, at the base of that, the foundation of that, is the funding model, the exchange model, which Ken will talk about shortly, and sort of getting that foundation. But there are definitely opportunities for us in terms of what we're doing. There are markets out there, and because we've put a value on our enrolments, we can get them from anywhere. Because we're starting to use platforms like Hangouts here, it doesn't matter what schools have. They don't need a Polycom to access our courses. Well, some of them this year. So that's really important going forward. We need to develop a presence nationally, which at the moment we don't really have, and that's going to take some time and some work. And in fact, that annual report is one example of how to develop that, because we now have that document which we can use with potential partners, with whoever wants to know more about NetNZ, and distribute it widely, as well as other things. So there's opportunities with the international market, adult learning. There's so many there that it's almost probably a wee bit overwhelming. So we just have to focus ourselves on what we can do in the immediate future and build on it. So I suppose what would be initially looking at getting this funding model working, where we have this exchange between schools. So Ken, did you want to talk about that now, or add anything?
No, yes, I will talk, as I'm good at doing. But I've made a few notes, and it relates to two parts of the annual report, but particularly to that looking forward, achieving financial sustainability, which Darren has started discussing already. But I'm actually going to wander a little bit. I'm going to wander to the back half of the annual report. First reading of the accounts which are presented here, actually sort of it looks very, very, very good. Basically, the finances show a net surplus of $43,000 and almost $126,000 in the bank. However, that isn't an accurate picture of actually the financial state of NetNZ at all. Yeah, sure, we have got those reserves, or a little bit less now. But the reason for that surplus coming through was a result of two lots of one-off payments which came onto NetNZ's books during 2014. First of all, we had schools contributing those one-off membership joining fees, which meant that the membership subscription was significantly higher than it would be on an annual basis. And secondly, the residuals of Canton Net's resources were transferred over to NetNZ during the 2015 financial year, last year's thing. So it has the effect of taking us out of a deficit situation and making us look like we are actually a lot more financial than we are. In reality, we were running at an operating loss if you take those things out of the picture. And likewise, when we've done the budget for this year, it's a deficit budget, so we will end up in a worse situation than what we started the year in. And while I'm talking about it, there is a missing part of the annual report which will have to appear in the annual report next year. It's a statutory thing which is being introduced as part of the accounting standard, and that's a statement of service performance. Now, we have partly reflected that in some of the statistics we've shared with you, but we basically will have to report on the objectives and outcomes and outputs that we achieved during this year in a year's time. And when you think about it, when we set up NetNZ, there were probably 4 or 5 key goals, objectives which we really wanted to sort of achieve. And I'm going to, if I can be clever enough, I'm actually going to put up a slide just so that you don't have to keep looking at me, which hopefully you can see yourselves. I'm hoping that in a moment when I duck over here, can you see my screen, or are you still seeing the video? Can someone tell me?
I can see your screen, Ken.
Okay, so you can see the slide I've got up there. Is that right, Stephen?
Yes, I can. Certainty, diversity, affordability.
Okay. Yeah, these are really what I think the sort of 4 or 5 big goals, objectives of NetNZ were. We articulated them slightly differently, but the certainty, basically, for NetNZ, we wanted to make sure that courses were available and you had sure access to those courses. We also wanted to sort of be in a position where we could leverage leverage access into non-NetNZ courses, and we wanted sort of certainty of employment. So there's that certainty. It's more than knowing that the course is available. Diversity, well, we wanted to extend the range of rich and relevant programs of learning which were available in our schools. We wanted them to be affordable. In other words, schools, well, they always want really more for less. We wanted quality learning and teaching, and that includes sort of the wraparound support which goes with it. And they're really the big 4, but we also wanted to sort of do that. Now, at the moment, we're perhaps focusing on that affordability thing. The NetNZ model was about achieving affordability. And in this second slide, pretty much if you start in the bottom left-hand box, this is what we set up. We set up a NetNZ exchange which was $1,200 per placement for members, and you would by providing a course you got 10 placements back. So you could either provide courses and placements or purchase placements. However, we need to tweak this a little bit, and I've already have looked at those questions. I know Kelvin was saying, hey, how achievable really are those sustainability targets? For the system to work and for us not to be in a deficit situation, we need an average of 15 students in the class, in each class. Until we're at that point, we are still reliant on the old contributing system. Now, we need around about 50 courses, which we're not too far away from it. 50 classes, we're not too far away from it. But we are actually quite a long way away from, that average of 15. So we haven't actually got 750 enrolments. So this year, I think we've got about 515. So we do need to grow quite a bit. But at that point, at that top left-hand box, we have got a model where we can turn the corner and we can be at a fully sustainable sort of point using that $1,200 placement 1 for 10 exchange. We're not there yet, and therefore we still require schools to make what has traditionally been those staffing contributions, Cantonet and OtagoNet. Now, we've got an uneven field at the moment. What we really need is we need all schools to be purchasing, whether they're contributing or not, contributing a course or not. We need, on average, for them to purchase 6 placements. Now, that isn't for the OtagoNet schools. That isn't actually any different from what they already are. They're contributing 0.1, which entitles them to 6 extra placements. And about half of our schools, half the schools across NetNZ are already at that point. Other schools aren't at that point. And what we really need to have is a scheme where we get to that point. Darren has already mentioned that there's other ways of getting close to that 15, that average of 15 per class. Scale is very, very important. If we've got more members, we will fill up those classes. We also if we sell those enrolments to our other people, including the international markets, we can build up those numbers. But at the moment, that's not happening, and therefore, what's being proposed in this this annual report is that everyone moves to that position of purchasing sort of placements in the school. If you're just offering a course, effectively you're not contributing to the true cost of the course. None of the operations cost can be sort of met if it's always 1 for 10. We need to have a little bit more from that, and that's what we're trying to do here. So I'll just see whether I can get off this sharing and come back to me. That's really the intention of this part, and it is still open for discussion, but really what we want to do is we want to lift basically schools' minimum sort of purchasing of placements. And that will require some explanation. It doesn't actually involve a very big change for about half of our schools. But for the schools in Dunedin and in Southland, who at the moment are just contributing courses, we do need and there is an expectation that you actually start purchasing, and we I think we can achieve that those sustainability targets which I had up on screen probably fairly well within 2 or 3 years, which I think was the question which Kelvin, you were asking. How realistic are they? I think we can, with the growth of membership and with encouraging other schools to participate more. But it does require that, the key to it is about participating in the system. And at this stage, I'm going to stop. And Darren, you may want to sort of add to what I've said or elaborate on some of those things.
Oh, I mean, you've covered a lot, Ken. It's actually probably just reinforcing that participation aspect. It becomes a cost currently for schools when they're really paying for something they're not getting back. And there's as I said before, and Ken mentioned, there's a lot of potential to develop markets and to lower the cost for this for schools. But that's not going to happen overnight. I think it's unrealistic, especially we're considering how many we have in the executive, to have that happen overnight. So in the short term, we need to just cover our bases, basically. And then we can start actually really developing those markets and bringing funding streams in. And there's no doubt this year we'll be trying as hard as we can to bring in whatever funding we can and to develop whatever partnerships we can. But I mean, for me, I think it's about that participation, and I know Gary's watching here, but in terms, I've always looked at Roxburgh with some admiration to some extent, because I think they've changed the way they're doing education to some extent, and you've got this real blend of things going on. And I think that's going to happen more and more as we develop and schools change. And I think it's just a wee mind shift. And here, we need schools to have a mind shift in terms of, okay, I've purchased places on top of my course, I'm getting something back for that, and also doing something pretty good for the students. So that's all I'd probably reinforce. Whether Trevor or someone else wants to add, or Maury wants to put in, but also I think the key thing is for discussion as well. It's not sort of reactive or reactions in terms of, okay, we can't do this. It's looking for solutions if there are any issues around the short-term involvement of one or two of schools. So I think that's a key thing as well, is to develop discussions. So that's about it, Ken.
I can see a question from Steve about clarification of costs and so on. Rather than going into detail in this meeting at this particular point of time, I think we will come to individual schools, or perhaps have smaller meetings where we can really sort of clarify exactly what schools will be expected to sort of migrate towards. As I sort of say, that 6 pre-purchased or is really the goal. We need a mix of exchange and schools purchasing, and that is a challenge of participation, lifting participation in our schools. I guess the other thing I'd like to say, even in the best of our schools, there's this sort of almost artificial glass ceiling, which understandably schools put there, but in a lot of schools, you have students and you've got teachers wanting to participate in this online environment, but because of decisions made by staffing decisions largely made by schools, schools are adopting, and it's an unforeseen sort of unintended consequence. We've made sort of the true cost of each student placement very visible, and it's resulted in this schools being very cautious, and we really are sort of saying, look, keep some money out there, keep some staffing out there so that you can afford these opportunities for your students, perhaps for your teachers, to participate in the online space of NetNZ. Understanding that you've got to manage that staffing. Where you go for the minimum, we can't. We've got a glass ceiling. We collectively have got a glass ceiling. Your school has got a glass ceiling, and it's a matter of thinking beyond that, and perhaps thinking that perhaps we are depriving our kids of some of those opportunities. So it's a bit of a plea there. The other thing to do with lifting that average is, in the last year, often the subjects, the courses which are offered, we know that we can't fill them up. So we are going to have to get a lot tighter about what courses we can take and offer through NetNZ. If we're going to get courses which we already have surplus capacity, we don't want to add to it, and that was the situation which we were put in at the start of this year. So think about what you're offering, because that also makes our job harder to sort of achieve that 15 average. But at that point, I'm going to be quiet and hand back to you, Maury, or Darren.
Yep.
Sorry, Maury, can I just interject there? Well, it might be worth
Go ahead.
seeing if we're covering some of these questions, and Ken has addressed one or two, and then James has just put a question up there about the kura. And I'll be if you're the principals who are present and they will talk, it might be interesting to get a principal perspective on this as well. But I suppose my question is, if you're putting in students into courses online, then are you doing that as a sort of a bolt-on and add-on, or is it a way of creating more flexibility, and are you therefore saving in some other areas within your school? And in that sort of respect, it's not really a cost, because you're saving in potentially, for example, if you're putting 3-4 students into a French course that you might offer on site, you're obviously saving staffing there. Not that I'm talking about putting anyone out of a job, etc., but that is one way to look at it. And in terms of correspondence, I suppose it's looking at it as well as the value in terms of the approach to learning and how much better it is for the students, and that's something we always have to be mindful of, and that's why at the foundation of all of this is the quality of the teaching and learning, and that's really, really important, and that has to be pretty good. Sorry, can you add anything to that, or Maury, or Bill?
Yeah, I would like to sort of add to that. Like, yeah, the $1,200 cost isn't actually an unrealistic cost, particularly perhaps not so much for larger schools like Ashburton, but many area schools, smaller schools, will be running classes of 7 or 8. And if you do the sums of how you're using your resourcing, and you actually sort of cost it out, it's more than $1,200. So the $1,200 is operating on a premise of 10 people being in that class, and it requiring 0.2 of an equivalent full-time teacher to staff that. So it does seem like it's free when you use your own staff, but it isn't. It's the same. It's the same resourcing, except you're sharing that. In NetNZ, you're sharing that resourcing across a community of schools. And that's where we get that advantage. And as Darren sort of said, that for the same amount of staffing, instead of getting one subject teaching that class, you're getting probably 3 or 4 or 5 different courses which are being added to to your timetable, and unjumbling sort of locks and so on. The point James makes about correspondence school is a valid one. Those correspondence schools are free. Those students are dual enrolled, and the government are paying effectively the correspondence school cost. It isn't a level playing field. Unfortunately, they aren't giving us the funding, but we'll keep lobbying governments sort of level that field, and it would be nice to have some of that ministry funding. Anyway.
Can I add to that, Maury? Is that all right? it's just been something we've been talking about recently, and I suppose with respect to correspondence school as well. I mean, the vast majority of schools I go to throw their hands up in the air around the correspondence school, and the reality is this would never have happened way back in '94 if they'd been doing their job well, and maybe if they turn things around over the next 5 years, we wouldn't be needed at all. I'm not sure whether that's going to happen. I have actually a strong belief in the model here, and that's because it comes from within the schools, and I think that has major benefits to the schools themselves in terms of the teaching and learning, because I think there's more than just about courses. And if we can get in behind this and actually develop this presence nationally and make a lot of noise, I don't see any reason why you can't then actually start going to, Secretary for Education and the Ministry etc., and say, hey, here's an alternative model that actually potentially can go overseas as well. So, that would be interesting to follow the lives. But for a long time, a lot of this has been hidden. And I think one good thing about NetNZ is it's sort of getting a bit of a notice and attention. So I think we just have to keep developing that. So I suppose in a way, you're involved because you believe in it as well in terms of where it's going and the whole online education things. And I would rather the schools have ownership of that than, to be blunt, the correspondence school and where it's at the moment. I don't have faith that it will go anywhere there, but that's my personal opinion. So that's all else. All I'll say on that. Sorry.
Thanks, Darren and Keith.
One final comment of that achieving that surplus, it really opens up just so many possibilities for us as a community of schools, for NetNZ to really shape things and have the resources to shape things and create something which is even better and richer than what we've got. So while we've got our hands a bit tied by a deficit budget sort of situation, it's difficult to sort of realise those dreams. By breaking into an operating surplus, it just changes things totally as to what we can do, how we can operate, and that's my plea to schools is think of the long-term picture, not the immediate. How much is it costing me? And I'll be quiet now.
Okay. Thanks, Ken. Darren, can I just add very quickly that the questions that James, Kelvin, Rick are asking are the same questions that we've also debated in our meetings, and it's very hard, the risk of being unprofessional when we compare ourselves to the correspondence school. But I think what I'd sum it up by saying is that we would like to think that we were a high quality alternative to the correspondence school, in that we can take advantage of opportunities that may not present themselves to them. For example, getting sponsorship, working with overseas organisations, etc., etc. So, but it is something that we measure ourselves against all the time and say, well, are we offering a better product than what these people could get for nothing from the correspondence school? So we do look at that. And I should add, at the end of this meeting, there is a general business section where we will end the formal meeting as such, but we're going to stay open for a while for people to ask further questions or to get involved in further discussion. But we really do appreciate the fact that you are asking those questions and giving us the opportunity to explain what we're doing. So thanks, Darren and Ken. Do you, Ken, want to refer back to the tabled annual report, or do you think you've covered that now?
Well, if people have more questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, we'll see those coming up. I've realised, of course, that I probably should have asked for the annual report to have been adopted, and then we should have asked for further business. So I think we've got this. Well, I've got this the wrong way around. So I'll now move that we accept the adoption of the annual report, and ask if there's a second for that one, please.
I'll second that.
Thanks again, Bill. All in favour? Just give me a wave.
Can I speak to
Aye.
that before you
Yeah,
Yes,
go,
from
Ken.
Michael.
Hi, Michael. Thank you. Go, Ken.
Okay. The way the annual accounts part of the annual report, we don't want that adopted at this point of time. There is still some work which needs to be done. So, can I move a modification, or can that we receive and adopt the report section of the annual report?
Yeah, very good point, and I'll second that. Thank you, Ken. Do you want now to do the presentation of the draft accounts, or do you think that's covered?
The draft accounts, probably I've said what needs to be said. There may be specific things which people want to ask about, but it is this big picture that it looks a lot rosier than it actually is. It needs to be interpreted with those two one-off things, and that's really the key point that I wanted to make. The reason for not adopting the annual accounts part of the report is that there are still a number of issues which we need to clarify in terms of the treatment of things from a taxation point of view, which the board will be able to sort of consider after this meeting and approve, because in actual fact it's the trustees who will approve this. As shareholders, we can do it at a later stage, and the board can sign off on it. But if people got specific questions, do ask about those annual accounts.
Okay, thanks, Ken. We're up to specific business now. Point number 6 on the agenda. Calling you again, Ken, to talk about the confirmation of directors' fees.
Yeah, the directors' fees to date. It's been a totally voluntary position. I guess as one of the members of the executives who really don't benefit from this at all, I am keen to, even though we haven't got a lot of money, to introduce directors' fees. They do a lot of work, and they also assume a lot of responsibility and legal liability, and I think it is appropriate that the time and responsibility that they assume is recognised. That's one of the reasons. The reason for setting the fees at the point suggested in the annual report, or in the budget of $300 a meeting, is because often we are requiring those teachers to come out of school, and there is cover costs, and for like Madeline, if she was continuing to come to a meeting, the home school needs to employ a reliever, and that is about a cost of around about $300. It is also a cost which is probably not too out of kilter with similar sort of directorships on similar types of boards. So that was that's what we're suggesting, and I would like to move that those directors' fees are confirmed.
Thank you, Ken. It's a slightly awkward one for us. If somebody would like to second that, rather than put you in an awkward position, I'm happy to second it, but can I just explain that one of our reasons for putting in a set of directors' fees is because we still have the choice to not take those fees, but we would like the organisation going forward to have that built into it so that we can continue to attract high quality people in the future as the organisation grows, and we're confident that the organisation will grow significantly. So this isn't about feathering the nest of the current trustees, it's about going ahead for the future. As I said, we still, some of us choosing not to take that fee, but we think it needs to be built in there. So that's to give the further background to it. So,
Maury, I'd also be happy to make some independent.
Thanks, Stephen.
So,
please.
I'm not in a position where I'm receiving fees as the advisor and won't be as a director, so I think I can make observations independently. And I also sit on a number of boards of more of a commercial nature, but some that are also, as you said, Ken, organisations have different approaches to this. So I think the per meeting fee approach is very conservative in terms of the total amount that may be received by any individual director. It's comparable with, as you say, other similar organisations, and I think it's entirely appropriate, as you have expressed, Ken, that those who are putting in considerable time and taking risk as the director of a company are recognised at least in some small way. So being totally independent of the process, I think the recommendation's quite appropriate.
Thank you, Stephen. What the whole point of what we're doing tonight is that these can only be voted on by the trustees anyway, but we will take on board the views of the people out there. So if you do have a view on this, or a particularly a strong view, then please message us so that we can take that into consideration at and when we ratify the decisions from this meeting. Thank you for that. I would like to move now also that Paulson Higgs be appointed as the independent examiner for the year ending 31st of December 2015. So I will move that. If I can have a seconder, please, from the trustees. Nod, Bill? Yep. I can see you talking, but you're still muted, so thank you.
I will second that, Maury.
Thank you very much. Point number 7 now, election of the trustee stroke director. This is a person representing the other colleges. And I'm pleased to announce that Anne Williams has been elected to that position by those of you that are eligible voters. Anne's currently at Ashburton, where she's the E-Dean. She's the teacher librarian. She was on the management team at Cantonet, and she is sitting beside Darren there. So, Anne, if you would just like to say hello so that we can see you on the broader screen.
Oh, hello everyone. Thank you very much for electing me. I am very excited about this whole online learning world.
Thank you, and we look forward to you joining us. I'd just also like to acknowledge 2 other women that put their names forward for possible selection. That's Marina and Marjorie. And at this time, I'd also like to acknowledge and thank Madeline for her contribution over the course of this period. Madeline is stepping aside for Anne's position, so thank you to you both for that. Agenda item number 8, motions to be put to the AGM, and the amendment to the Constitution. This is a constitutional change that can be only approved again by the trustees, and it is a request from the IRD for transparency reasons for us to be a donee, in other words, an organisation that can receive funding. So there's nothing sinister about this at all. So again, in our wish to be transparent to other people, we just wanted to put this up on the agenda so that people could see what we're doing. So I will move that the adoption that clause S2.4 be added to the schedule of Constitution that reads, no NetNZ limited shares may be issued or transferred to any person or organisation other than a New Zealand registered charity. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Still unmuted. Thank you, Bill. I'm not going all in favour anymore because I realise there's only about 3 people that can do it, so we're already there. Now on to item 9, general business. I'm asking if there is any general business. Ken, perhaps you'd like to come back in at this stage, see how we might run that general business.
I'm just looking at the Q&A questions and just wondering whether there's any which we need to
probably Kelvin's question about the staffing costs being the elephant in the room, but probably now is not the best time to do that. Maybe that's something we can continue after this meeting.
I'm just wondering if perhaps Darren, you start a proper hangout, not rather than a hangout on air, which you can sort of see whether there are any sort of ongoing discussions. I'd quite like the trustees to remain after the meeting so that we can clean up a couple of things. But otherwise, I think, Maury, we're about done.
Okay, so I couldn't hear all that. Are you asking Darren to set up another hangout meeting where some of these issues can be addressed? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's right. And for trustees to remain in this hangout.
Okay. All right. Well, can I just... Sorry, Darren. Can I just bring us to a close then? Thank everybody very much for their attendance. That hopefully it is a positive historical event that we've all just been a part of, and that we can continue to move forward. Thank you so much to the number of you that have been posting comments and being a part of this. Hello, I just see one's come in. I know somebody's just asked me to go on mute, so clearly that was a while ago. So thank you again for your attendance, and I look forward to seeing you all support us in the future, and thanks for all the work that's gone into it. Ken, do you just want to close off with technically?
Technically, really, I will stop the meeting. Those active members will remain in the the hangout. So Bill and Madeline, if she's still there, well, it doesn't look like she is. And Maury, and Anne, if you can, it'd be quite good for you to just hang around. You know, Anne, you're an incoming trustee. It should have probably been Madeline as her final job, but it looks like she may have gone. But I'll close the meeting now. Darren, I don't know. You've got an idea who's there. You may be able to start a hangout and send out an invitation to those people. Will that work? He's already gone by lots of things. Okay, yeah, just board members here. I'll close the hangout on here now, and we can continue the trustees meeting.